LSU football fans are eating good. Meanwhile, LSU basketball fans aren't necessarily eating much these days. We're talking about that and so much more today on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to the latest edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Hopefully you're having a tremendous Thursday morning. I know I sure am, because I'm spending time with you and we got to talk about what's going on in the world of college athletics, more specifically on the LSU slant today, because there are two big headlines that we need to get to. One of those being LSU football, Lane Kiffin, they are feeling like Britney Spears. Oops, they did it again and got another quarterback to jump over from the transfer portal. This is the third one this week. They've been able to kind of say, hey, come on over. And next thing you know, they have got them in-house. And we're talking about, obviously, Sam Leavitt and now Husan Longstreet, a five-star recruit in the 2025 class. He is making the jump over to LSU. The young man is going to be alongside Landon Clark, who transferred from Elon on Sunday right before the big one dropped on Monday morning. So it's definitely a stacked quarterback room already. And that's impressive as all get out, especially when you look back at the way things were about a month ago, right? Is Lane Kiffin is announced as the new head coach. You know, Garrett Nussmeier, his collegiate career is done. You have Jawan Johnson, Colin Hurley, all your quarterbacks that were underneath Michael Van Buren. They are all out the door. And you wind up getting two really good dogs. Again, you get a five-star player to transfer over. That's a huge feather in your cap alongside Sam Leavitt, who has 2 years of eligibility left in the tank, but at the same time, he could leave after the 2026 season if things go extremely well. So now you've got a chance to build something in terms of the quarterback room. And it's fun because I was thinking about this yesterday, is that, you know, when you look at this quarterback room, and this is something I used to do back in the day when I was at my previous stead, was do an intense deep dive into, you know, the depth charts. And that would be for every single position. I'd give you my overall thoughts on who would be the QB1, who'd be behind them. And it would be the same thing with every single position. I'd do that every week from like SEC Media Days until we get to the start of the season. And it was fun to do. I loved that part of my job. And I did that just for fun. And it helped me stay informed. This is going to be the most interesting one the next couple of years, because I think that if Husan Longstreet sticks around and competes with Landon Clark in 2026, I feel like he could, the 2027 season, if everything goes according to plan, and after the 2026 season is done, Leavitt says, all right, I'm exiting stage left and I'm going to the NFL draft. That is going to be interesting in terms of what happens with him next. Getting Longstreet is a really good plan B, especially if, an emphasis on the word if, Sam Leavitt is not healthy week one. And also Landon Clark isn't half bad either. I know I kind of laughed at the idea of an Elon QB, but I have to say it's impressive to see what this guy's been able to do and get people that interested in a kid that was playing at Elon. But once again, you look at Lane Kiffin's track record, especially at Ole Miss, he turned a D2 quarterback into one of the hottest names. I don't think he's going to be the number one draft pick come April, but his name and his stock rose significantly over the last 3-4 months, being the QB1 with Lane Kiffin. That's kind of where I feel with him right now. but it is interesting to see what we talked about it a lot yesterday is how impressive the run has been over the last week or so in terms of getting players to commit and getting some really solid names aboard. Getting 3 QBs in 1 week is nothing short of impressive, and that's amongst all the other wide receivers that they've been able to get. I think now the focus needs to be getting those big uglies ready to go, because that's going to be the biggest challenge I think LSU has heading into this 2026 season. If anything can be taken away from what we saw in 2025, because I talked about it a lot, that offensive line was pa ball all the way around. But you know what else was pa ball? What was going on with LSU men's basketball? They were playing Kentucky tonight, and they came up short 75-74. And again, this isn't the peak, you have John Calipari leading that team. This isn't that level of Kentucky. They're not ranked, but 11-6, 2-2 in the SEC. And they were up 40-22 early in the second half. They were 40-22. That's a 22-point lead. You had that game in the bag. Would have been a great moment to see LSU get a nice win over Kentucky. It's not necessarily the same level of rivalry as it was back in the 2000s, maybe even in the 2010s during those Johnny Jones years. Because even when an LSU team was bad, they kept it at least somewhat competitive when Kentucky came to town. Like the PMAC would have been rocking. Not this time around. Not this time around. With 8,000 people seeing LSU blow a 22-point lead, missing 2 free throws with less than 2 seconds left, and Kentucky went out the door and wound up winning 75-74. Just absolute, gut-wrenching loss, especially because it was off a buzzer beater from Malachi Moreno. You're sitting there, if you're at LSU, like, what the hell happened? Like, how did we blow this lead that tremendously? And I could probably tell you why. You didn't have much bench depth, once again. And also, I think this is another kind of nail in the coffin for the career of Matt McMahon as the head coach of LSU men's basketball. We talked about it last week, how I felt like we needed to have a serious conversation about his future, because I don't think there's much of one at this point in time. If I'm LSU, and I know Verge Osbury, he said, at the end of the season, myself, the new president at LSU, we are going to discuss this and we're going to evaluate his future here at LSU. I don't think there's any more evaluation that needs to be made. They played a paper-thin start to the season. The only real tough team they played, they lost against, 0-4 in the SEC, in the Conference of Dixie. Again, who do they really play that was really worth their salt? I think Boston College and SMU could be the only 2 games that we can say, hey, they weren't half bad. But even then, you're losing to Texas A&M, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and then you lose in heartbreaking fashion. You were up by 22 points in the second half. At one point in the second half, they were up 40-22. Absolutely unacceptable. If you think that's acceptable, if you're an AD, I think you need to have your card pulled into question here. Like, I'm blown away to be saying that. Again, 22-point lead early after Max McKinnon hit 2 free throws with 19:22 left in the second half, right? Very early in the game, in the second half, but still looked pretty doggone good at that point in time. Next thing you know, they wind up blowing that lead very, very quickly. Like, it was pretty fast to see where LSU was. Again, 40-22. And then by the time we got to the media timeout, the second media timeout, it was absolutely one-sided. It was 52-43 by the time you got to the second media timeout with 11:27 left. Think about that. LSU only scored 12 points in that, 8-minute time frame. You can't be having that against SEC caliber opponents. I understand that this isn't the LSU that we're used to seeing in recent history with Will Wade leading that program. This isn't the same old Kentucky that we've seen in the past. I mean, they're 2-2 and very early in SEC play, but still, the fact that you are the only team in the entire Conference of Dixie that has not seen a win is not a fun time. And then you're kind of going through a gauntlet right after. You're taking on Mizzou, who is 3-1 in conference play, 13-4 overall. Then the following week, you've got 19th ranked Florida, 17th ranked Arkansas, and then you take on Mississippi State to wrap up in the tail end of the month of January, and then you play South Carolina to wrap it up on the 31st. I don't see a whole lot of wins coming their way based off of what I've seen this season in SEC play. Again, great start to the season, but it was against a bunch of jabrones. That's not going to help you get things done on the basketball court. And speaking of guys that can't get it done on the basketball court, we also got to kind of talk about what's going on with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. Right before we tape this podcast, Texas State took down the Cajuns 59-54. Cajuns are sitting at 4-15, 2-5 in the Sun Belt Conference. And there were some bright spots. Dorian Finney winds up putting up 18 points in 34 minutes of action, 6-9 from the free throw line, 5-11 from the field. He was the kind of the lone ranger when it comes right down to it in terms of the scoring output for this Cajuns program. Meanwhile, Texas State only had 3 guys in double digits all game. Cajuns only had 2. It was Finney and Devion Laverne. Those are your guys you're having to kind of look towards. And again, I said this a couple weeks ago about the Cajuns. The fan base needs to show a little bit of patience. I understand that it's tough to do that in this day and age, but you cannot tell me for a second that this Cajuns team was going to see that big of a turnaround that quickly with, Quantus White. I didn't see that coming. I think he needs to have a little bit more time, and more importantly, he needs to start being able to cook with his own ingredients and getting some new guys and some fresh blood in there. Because right now, what they have, it is not working at all. And I'm hoping against hope, this Cajuns team can get it together. But that'll about do it for today's edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to us today. That way you don't miss a single solitary thing. So until then, talk to you tomorrow.